Okay. We're good. Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, Lord Hokers 87 here, and I'm bringing you a new video, a new Yugi 2 video. Also, on side note, I'm having a few technical difficulties. I had everything all set up a few hours ago, and I'm not sure if my camera is working. If not, hello audience. If not, we'll just go for it, because you don't need to see my face. So anyway, here's today's video. I'm bringing you my preemptive thoughts on what Konami can take off the forbidden list, and only the forbidden list. Now, anything I suggest today will be, shall we say, brought only to 1. Because at 2, they might be considered too broken, even for extremely old cards. Now, I've got a few selections up in my tabs, and I'll be going through each of them as I go down the list. So, as we can see on the list, the update on the list will be no earlier than January 21. Today, as you can see on my computer, is the 16th, 5 days before the list could be updated. So we're going to go through the list. I have looked at some of these at an earlier date, and some of them I think, maybe they can be, but I can also see why they could still be an issue considering the link error and possibly even Master Rule 4. So we're going to start with Chaos Emperor Dragon, because he recently got errated. And let's bring him up here, thanks to my good buddy, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia. So, looking at the current errata form, we can see that, well, it's probably better if I show you the errata of past and compare. Because I reckon Chaos Emperor Dragon Envoy of End can come back. So here's the original errata. So basically, when you paid 1,000 life points to send all cards in both players' hands and field to grave, 300 points are inflicted to your opponent for every card sent to the graveyard. And let's compare that to the current. Where is it? Here we are. Now, it starts up the same way by paying 1,000 life points and sending the same cards to the graveyard as well, but the damage inflicted is only for all cards sent to the opponent's graveyard. So before, you could potentially OTK with its old original errata, but now, an OTK with this, and I've done the math, would only be possible if your opponent has 6,000 or less life points and they have a full field. And that's only in that circumstance. I reckon that with this errata, Envoy of the End can come back to the TCG. Because we look at it, it's unlimited in the OCG and only forbidden in TCG. So, Konami, we could probably use Chaos Emperor Dragon. It would make a nice complement to the Envoy of the Beginning BLS. And I think that pretty much does it for Chaos Emperor Dragon. So we'll move on to the list to Cyberjar. Now, Cyberjar is another old card, once used by Seto Kaiba in the anime. Now, he is a flip monster and also ironically forbidden in both formats. But I don't see his effect being too troublesome. In fact, it's both a positive and a negative effect. Because let's run through it. As a flip monster, blows up all the monsters in the field, and both players excavate the top 5 cards of their decks and special summon all level 4 and lower monsters in face up or face down defense. Any excess cards are added to the player's hand. Now, this can set up for setting up a great defense with low level decks like FAs or Pendulum Magicians or Wind Witches, Magispectors, and basically any other deck that uses low-level monsters. Like, oh, here's another good example, Skull Serpents. But that's if your deck is built to work with it. Because this deck would be a great advantage against high-level decks like True King Draco, Dark Magician, about the majority of Blue Eyes. Basically anything that has a lot of high-level monsters in it. Like, the deck is mostly high-level monsters. Like, maybe even like rank 10 trains. Plus, this is non-targeting destruction. Now, there could be cards that can survive this due to their own special abilities to be card destruction that have card destruction immunity and such. But I reckon that Cyberjug could come back to one, like a Nutter Jar that recently got put back on the limited list, Morphing Jar. Now I also want to talk next about Cyberstein. One card that pretty much started the whole ban list thing, if I remember my Yu-Gi-Oh history correctly from, I think it was one of Mecha Cap G's videos. Like, he calls an emergency ban list. But I can see that he could be feasibly playable again if he's errata. All he needs is an errata, and he could not only come back, but he could be playable. He could be big. Now, let's just look for a moment that he is limited in the OCG. So, the OCG, they have Cyberstein. We don't. We in TCG, we don't. So, looking at his effect, you pay 5k life points. You special summon a fusion monster from your extra deck in attack position. That's it. Now, if you have let's say you have a shit ton of life points, because you've got things like soul absorption, spell absorption, I don't know, probably a lot of life point boosting effects and cards going on. You could probably get off Cyberstein, since he's not once per turn, multiple times to get off a whole bunch of fusion monsters. And this is basically any fusion monster, essentially, that you can just simply get out. There might be a few that might not be able to be summoned because of Cyberstein, because of their own summoning conditions and such. But hey, I don't know every ruling in the game. My rather suggestion for Konami would be to say, make this effect once per turn. Because in most cases, you're only going to get one shot at his effect. And also, in addition, make it so that the monster is destroyed during the end phase. Because Cyberstein is essentially basically any fusion monster summon version of what I was blanking on the name for a moment, but he's basically an expensive no bars hold instant fusion. Instead of paying instant fusions 1,000 points for a level 5 or lower fusion monster, you're paying 5,000 for any fusion monster you can summon. That's big. That is really big. But that's a costly play to make. But I reckon if you errata it to destroy the fusion monster during the end phase, and making the summoning effect for the fusion monster a once per turn effect, you can make him a feasible card to play, even in the meta, even in casual, which I love my casual. I play a lot of casual. So I reckon that you could probably bring Cyberstein back. Plus, the fact that he is an old card that hasn't been reprinted much to my knowledge, and according to this, he has only been printed once as a rare. So only people who got him around 25, maybe even in the following 2 years afterwards, or have actually made a trade for him because of his old value and such. I don't think I even have a copy myself. But yet, Cyberstein could be big if errated and brought back to 1. Especially if both happen. But hey, these are just my thoughts. The next one we're going to look at is good old Dandelion, because I think Dandelion deserves another chance at the game. Now, I am aware that there are things like really powerful plant decks around, which Dandelion can really empower, especially with the Fluffle tokens. And yes, I know what I just said. I said Fluffle, even though there's supposed to be Fluff tokens. It's not a Fluffle card. And let's point out for a moment that limited in OCG, forbidden in TCG. So that's a thing, again. Sorry if I'm a bit quiet. I'm just looking at the effect and thinking, could Konami do anything with the errata to make it so they can bring it back? Because Dandelion is another old school card that basically is like a... Well, he's the GX era card. So he's in the whole not once per turn category. I actually don't have a big argument as to why you could bring Dandelion back. He's a cool card. Like, he's not very powerful, he's not very high level, but he does produce tokens when he's sent to the graveyard. In fact, the more I look at the effect and think about how you could get his effect off, like Tribute Burial him, like not Tribute Burial, I mean Foolish Burial him, because you could do that. Just pitch him straight from the deck to the graveyard, get his effect off. He probably could use an errata to make him viable in TCG so he's less broken. Maybe even make him once per turn. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just spitballing here this time. And I think on that we will move on to the next card because we've still got a few cards to get through. So we're going to move on to another of the Jar family, the Fiber Jar. Yet another old card. I actually did see a semi-recent reprint apparently. Yeah, in the Joey's World Mega Pack. And as a common too. Oh, maybe I do have that. But I see this as a pretty good card that could come back. You know, it's forbidden in both formats. So, as you can see, basic flip effect is it's a flip. Both players shuffle all cards in hand, field, and graveyard into the deck, then draw 5 cards. So that's basically like a state of equality for both duelists. And it is non-targeting removal. And that being said, this would give both players to recycle used hand traps. So we're like talking Ash Blossoms, Ghost Bells, Drool and Lockbards, Infinite Impermanence, Evenly Matched. And other things. Plus the fact that both players draw 5 cards after the removal. That's big. So I think you could bring Fiber Jar back to 1. Despite the fact that it is a plant monster and there's probably going to be like a big hype on plant-based decks. So I might end this discussion on Fiber Jar there and move on to the next one, which is one I do feel a bit of connection with. Magispec the Unicorn, Kirin. Now, those of you who know about Kirin know that he is excellent in pendulum decks. So essentially, you can target a pendulum monster you control and a monster your opponent controls and bounce them back to your respective hands. I'm actually just realizing how well this could work with kaijus. My god, that's dirty. Coming to this realization while I'm making a video. Oh my god. Oh my god. I wonder what Furious Goku would think about this. Shout out to Furious Goku there. Not a YouTuber, but one of me friendly Yu-Gi-Oh peeps. Anyway. In my opinion, the whole Master Rule 4 did weaken pendulums a bit. Because of not being able to go for the massive pendulum summon from the extra deck. But there are some decks that can get around this, like apparently Pendulum Magician is still a thing in the meta. But still, there are other pendulum decks out there, like, let's see, what pure type pendulum decks are there? Well, there's Dynamis, there's also Pendulum Magician, which we just mentioned. There's Despots, well, they're like a semi-pendulum deck, really. Point is, there is a call to have Kurum back, essentially. Now, Kurum is a once per turn effect, plus being a Magic Spectre monster, can't be targeted or destroyed by opponent card effects. And yeah, I just feel it's probably time Kurum came back off the list. Unlike of everything else I'm saying here, bring it back to one. That's all I'm asking, and probably other people will be asking. And here's the next card, one which I would like to see back, because I have a deck I'd like to put him in. It's not a competitive deck. It's basically just a fun, casual deck of mine, and he fits into the deck. I will probably do a video on the deck profile of this particular deck I'm speaking of, but I'm going to be very vague about it right now. So, looking at Mayura's effect, during the turn it's sent to the graveyard, you can activate trap cards from your hand. Now, to my knowledge, this has been banned for as far back as I can tell. That's basically since I started playing at my locals. I'd say probably for like the last 10 years, at least. I couldn't say. But he's been sitting on the ban list so long. Yes, he's not once per turn, like many old school cards. But he's one that I would like to see come back, even at 1. If I can play him at 1, I would be happy. I would be one happy duelist. And also note, forbidden in both formats, so yeah. He's just what I think might be a fun little card to have back in the format. So we'll move on to the next card, which happens to be Morphing Jar number 2. Now, Konami, you already brought Morphing Jar 1 back. Bring back his mate, Morphing Jar number 2, because the two work together well. So, those of you who are... Also, let's point out that he is unlimited in the OCG. Unlimited in OCG. And yet forbidden in TCG. Konami. Anyway, let's move on to the effect of him. So, once again, he's another flip monster like all of the jar monsters. Or at least most of the jar monsters. Let me just... Okay, that's still going. Ignore that. Ignore that for a minute. So, his effect is to shuffle all monsters on the field into the deck. Then both players excavate from the top of their deck until they excavate the same number of monsters shuffled from their main deck. So if you have 4, your opponent has 4, basically you get 4 monsters. But here's the kicker. The effect reads as to special summon all excavated level 4 or lower monsters face down and send everything else to the graveyard. So there's a possibility that this effect could not only backfire on the enemy, on the opposing player, but also on the controller of the jar. And this is assuming that the morphing jar gets attacked as well, causing its own destruction. Because essentially by having its effect activated, it still gets destroyed. So that would leave the player duelist defenseless if they brick on their excavation. But if they get even just one target, say Morphing Jar 1 for example, they would be set. And the fact that this puts all the monsters summoned this way face down in defense mode is probably really good as well. So I reckon, Konami, you can bring Morphing Jar 2 back. And let's move on to the next one. Now, this next one, I had a bit of thought about this one. And yes, it's Amex Saber Invoker. Now, I do know that he has been used in the meta a lot before he got banned to help summon the Isolde of Noble Knights. Now, I'm thinking that maybe he can come back. Maybe. I'm just shooting out there because his summoning condition for his effect, so which you would probably be wanting to go into Isolde for, which you can probably design around, is for an Earth Warrior. But let's not forget, it also does Beast Warriors as well of the Earth attribute. But it is essentially to go in for a link summon of a Link 2 monster or more, depending on how many cards you can get on board during that move and turn. He's just one I feel that could come back, especially since he's unlimited in the OCG. And I know that us TCG players recently got a reprint of Isolde, making him a lot more accessible to us. He's just one that, well, I can use him in a number of my decks, even for the Isolde played. I've never made the play myself. But yeah, he's just one I think that maybe. I'm just saying. Here's another one I think has been on the list way too long. It's not one of the oldest ones there because it is an Xyz monster, but it is an archetype-based monster, as is his effect. The wind-up carrier Zen Meity? Yeah, Meity. So yes, he's a generic rank 3 monster. He only needs 2. Pointing out that he's unlimited in the OCG, once again. So the effect is, once per turn, detach 1 Xyz material, special summon a wind-up monster from hand or deck. When face-up, wind-up is destroyed and sent to graveyard, except during damage step. Detach material from this card to target that monster, return it to the hand. So it's very central to the wind-up archetype. Now, the wind-ups haven't gotten any new support since they got a Link monster. And from memory, it wasn't like a terribly awesome Link monster. But it probably does add a little bit of strength to the archetype. And even looking at the Xyz monster's points, 1500 and 1500. It's not a powerful monster. It's not a very powerful monster at all. Konami, you can bring this back. Even just at 1. This is... I just feel Konami can bring this back. This is, even though it's a generic summoning monster, aside from being used as like link fodder or something like that, I don't even know. Well, I suppose at the time this got banned, wind-ups were big, but wind-ups aren't very big at all. So I think it's time Carrier Zenmaity came back off the list, even at 1, maybe 2. Because if you look at the printings, he wasn't a common card to get. Only 2 prints in Order of Chaos, both of them really rare. Ultra and Ultimate. That was back in 2012. Alright, and let's move on to the next card on the list that I would like to see come back. And it's good old Graceful Charity. Now this is one of the few draw cards on my that you'll be seeing in the video that I think can come back. Now, first of all, we'll point out forbidden in both formats. Now, Graceful Charity is basically a well, I suppose in the game terminology you'd call that a +0, because you look at the effect. You get a +3, but then you have to discard 2 cards. I'd say maybe it's just a +1. Yeah. We'll just call it a +1 for the sake of argument. Now, this I could probably see being abused in possibly Danger and Dark World decks. Perhaps even Danger Dark World itself. Just to help load the graveyard full of them and get off their graveyard effects. And possibly even in other decks like that. But since it is just like a spell card, I don't really see too much danger in just bringing this back to 1 copy. Sure, you might get the effect off once, but I don't see how you're gonna get the effect off multiple times. So I'm gonna move on to the next one, and it's Harpy's Feather Duster. Now, one of the reasons that I'm going to say they can bring this back is because, well, let's face it, Sisters of the Rose recently got released, so Mai has gotten new support. Plus, in 2018, we got a trap card. Actually, let's just see if I can bring that up here. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Harpy's Feather Storm. One of the effects of it is to add a Harpy's Feather Duster from deck or graveyard to hand. That being said, it's not reliant on that effect alone. That's just a destruction effect of it. But with Feather Duster banned, it's a dead effect. Still, Harpy's Feather Duster is your all-round basic back row removal of your opponent. But it would be a card that would have very good synergy in its original deck archetype, Harpies. Now this is one that may not get limited and brought off the list. It might even stay there forever. Like we'll probably see with Heavy Storm and such. But I'm just saying it would be nice if we could get Harpy's Feather Duster back, because it's one of those old cards that many of us probably think could come back off. Even to help support Featherstorm as well. So let's move on to the next one, which is the one that I think everyone would love to see off the list, Pot of Greed. Because who doesn't love drawing 2 cards for basically no nasty costs? No tributes, no special restrictions, no banishing a quarter of your deck face down as dead cards. Just a simple +2. Now, I know that, well, maybe not no, but I can imagine that decks that don't have generic draw cards built into their engines or can adopt things like trade-in or the 7 stars one, Cards of Conscience, or really don't like cards like Pot of Desires, or before Pot of Indulgence didn't really run or need an extra deck. And because its closest counterpart, the Shard of Greed, is a bit of a slow card, everyone would probably love to see Pot of Greed come off the list, including me. But we realize it's probably not going to happen, so all we can do is say, Konami, please give us back Pot of Greed. 1 copy. That's all we ask. Give us back our pot. Just look at that Pot of Greed. You know he wants to come back. He's gritting and everything. And let's move on to the next one. Premature Burial. Now, being an equipped spell, you can see how this could probably be used in conjunction with Isolde as monster summoning fodder, but that's not why I think it could come back. Because this is a cost card. You pay 800 life points to resurrect a monster, and it has to be in attack mode. So it's not a very quick card, but it could lead to massive plays done the right way, bringing back a key monster that you need to get a combo off. And I just think it's a nice generic tech for monster resurrection. A bit costier than Monster Reborn, but it is limited to your graveyard, so it means that you have to resurrect one of your monsters for the life points, and summon it in attack mode as well. So you could use this to summon back your Link monster from the graveyard. So this could be relevant in the current format if they bring it back. And I think of that we'll move on to the next card, which technically is the last card on the list. I'd say it is the last card on the list because this last one, that's a very special card that I want to talk about. Now this last one, it obviously, from what you can tell, is returned from the different dimension. Now, because this card has such, well, it can have a potentially high cost because you're paying half your life points. But that means that even if you're extremely low on life points, like only have 100 left, it is still a card you can play to get you out of that probably near defeat point. So essentially what this does, by paying half your life points, you summon as many banished monsters to your field as possible. Of course, they have to be your banished monsters, of course. The downside is, during the end phase, all those monsters that were summoned from the effect are banished at the end phase. So basically, this is you get all these monsters back only for the turn. If you can't do anything with them, you're probably doomed. Now this is banned in both OCG and TCG. So it's another card that we may not see come back in. But seeing as it is a trap card, and from the word is trap cards too slow. Plus, this is a costly card. Like, you can even compare this card to Solemn Judgment, another card which is a trap card, a counter trap card, but also costing you half your life points. Even another card that has a similar cost, in fact the exact same kind of cost of paying half your life points, in Dark Magician decks, Dark Magic Curtain. Pay half your life points, summon Dark Magician. Now, this card is mostly dangerous in decks that do a lot of banishing. Like macro decks that use like Grand Measure. Like, if you end up, like, you could potentially summon like 3 super powerful Grand Measures off this card, which would make it very dangerous and very competitive in the format. But it could even work for even like other decks that do a lot of banishing, like I think Lightsworn do a bit of banishing as well. And zombies. Oh, zombies do a lot of banishing themselves these days now. Because of Matakoshkis and Shiranus. Yeah. And these are just my thoughts. So that essentially is basically everything that's on the list that I'd like to see come back. There probably are a few other cards that I could probably talk about, but I'm probably not going to talk about them. And yes, I'm not going to talk about Firewall Dragon, even though I did realize that there is an effect of Firewall Dragon that, for one, I have not seen used in duels I've seen in YouTube videos, or even in the supposed meta to my knowledge. That I probably could have used my 1 copy of Firewall Dragon to utilize that effect. I forget what it is, and I'm not going to bother showing you it. But let's move on to the last card I want to talk about, Card of Last Will. Now, this card is basically an illegal card to use. Can't be used in any game. It's the exclusive member of the You Can't Use Me Club. And it is another card I would love to see become playable. Now, that would make it not the first one of the few cards that have started out as illegal cards that can't be used and brought in as a legal playable card. But that's only if Konami pay any attention. And there's no hurry to see if they can bring this card out, although I'd like to see it. Now, essentially, I see nothing wrong with the effect. But here it is. If the attack of a monster or monsters you control becomes 0 by a card effect, draw until you have 5 cards in hand. How is that an effect that gets the card instantly illegalized? Like, looking at the few monsters that have effects that can basically bring their attack points directly down to 0, they're not very big in numbers. Plus, there are also cards in the game that can decrease monster attack points. Dark Jared is one good example. Summoning him will weaken a monster by 800 attack points. Plus, I remember that there's some equip spells that can weaken the monsters they're equipped to by a certain amount. And even over the course of turns, that they continue weakening. And I imagine that there's other effects out there as well. Not the fact that there are also field spells and the 6 attribute boosters that have negative powering effects on certain monster types and attributes. So those could be used in conjunction to trigger this card if made legal. But it's just something that I thought about since its original printing in where was it printed in again? Oh yeah, that's right, Legendary Collection 4 Joey's World. Because it was one of the what you would call a promo card in the box set. Because it was a box. And that basically does do it for the video, essentially. That's all I wanted to talk about. Now, I am essentially making this video a little close to the supposed list update timeline thing. So I'm hoping Konami watch this video, even though I'm a small YouTuber and only basically new to the Yugi-tubing thing, which I'll continue to do alongside my regular, or should I say, my irregular content and such. See if I can bring you. I'm actually losing myself. I'm losing myself. Now, some of you might be thinking about, what about some of the other cards? Well, like I said, I'm not going to be talking about them. Nor am I going to make any predictions about what's going to be coming onto the limited list or coming off the lists or such. We're just going to have to wait and see, and I would definitely bring you a video for when the next list drops. And I hope to bring you a live reaction of my face as I go, wow, they banned that, or wow, they brought that off the ban list. Because if we have just bear with me for a little bit, because on this list, Firewall Dragon was limited, he got banned. He was the only card that got banned. Armageddon was a new limit on the list. D-Hero Malicious was brand new on the semi-limited list. And they completely unlimited Assault Core, Cosmic Dark Destroyer, and Called by the Grave, which I think might have been big. Plus, a little commenting on the Wind-Up at Seas monster. Currently on the TCG ban on the on the list here, Wind-Up Magician at 2. And if I scroll up, let's see. Yeah, that's basically the only wind-up card other than the carrier that is on the list. And yeah, with that will do the video. So I hope you enjoyed. Oh my goodness, I've been going for that long? Well, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Check out my Discord channel. I will post that in the description below. Konami, please watch this video. Take my words into account, and probably the words of every other YouTuber that might be talking about this kind of thing and these kind of cards. Consider the players. Not just the big players who are in the meta, but the small players who just play for the fun of the game, who support the game through local stores and such. Anyway, I'm Lord Hercules, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Coming sooner than you'd think, actually. More on that in the next video, probably tomorrow. We're